Okay, good evening, and we are going to start our Zoom meeting for chapter 13. Okay, so we're following along chronologically in our book. And as always, we're going to look at the three major sections of what is going to be covered on your chapter 13 tests. We're going to look at the sections of your test book that are relevant to your exam. So we'll first look at communication, comunicación, then vocabulario, and finally estructura or grammar. So this unit, chapter 13, deals with la naturaleza y el medio ambiente, so nature and the environment. So let's move on here and quickly take a look here. So again, in the communication section, oftentimes the textbook wants to introduce certain idiomatic ways of speaking or things that they feel are important. And so let's look at these concepts. They're very simple, very straightforward, but let's take a look. And it's talking about what you think someone should do. So you might want to tell somebody, you should do that, or we should do this. And they're bringing this idea of trying to convince somebody or suggest that somebody do something because this chapter deals with the environment. So you might want to tell people, you might want to use less water when you bathe, or you might want to use less gasoline, take mass transit, or ride your bicycle. And so that's why that comes up in the context of this particular unit. And so if we go, let's see here, to the box on page 385, here it says, just take a look at this and make sure you're familiar with it. To talk about what you think you or someone else should or should not do, use a form of debería. It's from the verb deber, must or should. Okay, deber is the verb. This is the conditional form of deber, so it would mean should, the conditional form. And then you use the infinitive. So you should use less water. Usted debería, and then you put usar menos agua. So you use debería or a form of debería with the infinitive. We should use less water. Deberíamos usar menos agua. Okay. We should throw out less garbage. Deberíamos botar menos basura. Okay, we should throw away less garbage. Things that you could do deberíamos usar menos gasolina. We should use less gasoline. And look at some of the examples here. Again, debería would be usted debería, you should, we should be deberíamos. You, the informal you too, would be deberías, okay? And then you all would be deberían. And so let's take a look. Debería andar en bicicleta en vez de ir en coche. So debería would be, could be yo debería or usted debería. Again, they don't identify the subject pronoun here. You should or I should ride a bike instead of riding a car, okay, instead of driving. We should recycle, reciclar. No deberías contaminar. There's a two form. You shouldn't pollute. Contaminar is the verb to pollute. La contaminación is the word for pollution in Spanish. By the way, make sure you go through the vocabulary of this unit. A lot of the terms in this unit, since they're scientific, they deal with the environment and nature, there's going to be a lot of cognates with English. So this should not be too difficult vocabulary-wise, a a unit for you. And make sure you're familiar with the vocabulary. There's a lot of exercises that you can do. But so let's move on. That was the first area of comunicación. And then let's see what else they have. Okay. Here is the concept of cuánto tiempo hace que. And it's used in expressing how long you've been doing something. For example, I've been living in Greenville for 5 years. Or you might want to ask somebody, how long have you been living in Greenville? How long have you been recycling? So, there's questions like this that you can ask and answer. And we often use this standard way of speaking, ¿cuánto tiempo hace que? Literally, how long does it make that you? And then you use whatever. How long does it make that you recycle? How long does it make that you live in Greenville? That's basically what you are asking. And there's two ways of expressing how long you've been doing something and asking about it. You can use cuánto tiempo hace que, or you can use cuánto tiempo llevas. Llevar means to carry. Literally, how long have you been carrying on doing this? So cuánto tiempo llevas tú? But if you use the llevar form, instead of using the present tense of the verb, as you would with cuánto tiempo hace, for example, how long have you been living? ¿Cuánto tiempo hace que vives in Greenville? Notice I used the present tense there. When I use the phrase with llevar, I use the present participle of the verb. So, ¿cuánto tiempo llevas viviendo en Greenville? Okay, so ¿cuánto tiempo llevas viviendo en Greenville? It is asking, how long have you been living in Greenville? ¿Cuánto tiempo hace que llevas, with the present tense, is the same question. How long have you been living in Greenville? Just be aware of this. So here's another example using the verb reciclar. Again, there's a lot of cognates. Start getting familiar with this vocabulary. ¿Cuánto tiempo? Now we're going to use llevar. Llevas, and with the present participle. Reciclar, the present participle of reciclar is going to be reciclando. You should be able to form those. How long have you been recycling? Or ¿cuánto tiempo hace que? Now with hace que, I start a new clause, a new sentence, and I have to use the present tense of the verb. So ¿cuánto tiempo hace que tú reciclas? All right. And they give you some more examples here using sin, or using how long has it been that you haven't been doing something? So you can use sin with llevar, or if you're going to use hace que, you can put a no in. So take a look at that. It's a very, very simple, straightforward concept. Okay. All right. There's some sections in here with little pieces on the environment in different places in Latin America. Here's one on El Lago Enriquillo. Make sure you read about this. There's a lot of readings and a few listening sections on the Chapter 13 tests, and they're going to be about things having to do with nature or the environment. And there might be something on El Lago Enriquillo. Again, you'll read it or listen to it, and then there's going to be a lot of answering, short answers to either passages you read or listen to on this exam. But in any way, take a look at that little section. All right, let's move on here, and let's see. Make sure. Okay. I think that does it with comunicación, and then we get into vocabulario. All right, again, there are a lot of cognates when you're dealing with nature, la naturaleza, y el medio ambiente, because we're dealing with scientific terms, and a lot of our science, of course, it derives from Latin. So there will be a lot of words that you'll know or you should be able to recognize. Please go through this vocabulary so that you're familiar with these terms. Okay, we've all had a class on the environment, okay? And so this is standard science now in all high schools and colleges. So make sure you're familiar with these words. So the word for environment is medio ambiente, okay? Hay varias causas de la deforestación, is what it looks like. There are many causes for deforestation, okay? Deforestación, okay? And the word for forest is bosque, by the way. For jungle, it's selva. You'll look at this. We had the word cuidar is to take care of. Well, to not take care of something is el descuido. Okay, okay, all right. Quema is to burn. Okay, causar la quema de bosques, the burning up of bosques, of forests. Okay. Take a look at these words. La tala de árboles is the cutting of trees. Destrucción de bosques. Okay. A lot of these words you should know or are cognates. Al destruir. Upon destroying tantos árboles, okay, we affect the cadena alimenticia. What do you think that is? Alimentos are food. Cadena is a chain. So if we destroy trees or we destroy the forest, we're going to affect the food chain, la cadena alimenticia. Here's a good word to know, extinción, extinction, the word for species, las especies, flora y fauna. Okay, so look through these different terms, look through some of these diagrams, and familiar yourself with the food chain and some of this basic vocabulary. Again, contaminación, a key word, is what? Pollution. Contaminar is to pollute. Okay, global warming, here we go. Calentamiento global. All right. Let's see. Tormentas are storms, huracanes, inundaciones, all very clear language. Here they're saying we need to cuidar la tierra, we need to protect the earth. And they talk about that there are political activists that are interested in protecting the environment. Varios grupos de activistas, right? Activists luchan para. What do they luchar para? Luchar is that they fight for. For what? To proteger, to protect the medio ambiente, to prohibir la contaminación y salvar, to save animals. So look through these terms. Ecología, okay, all should be pretty easily understandable for you. So read through these sections and look at the vocabulary. A lot of it's just getting familiar with it, okay? And then they talk further on about recursos naturales, natural resources. Animales salvajes are wild animals. Salvaje means wild. Okay. Agotamiento is the using up of, okay. Los bosques, okay. Or exhausting los bosques, agotamiento. All right. Sostenible means sustainable. Okay, we want sustainable solutions, soluciones sostenibles. So take a look at this. And here they talk about some animals that are in possible danger of extinction. El delfín, dolphin, the sea lion, el león marino, el mono monkey perezoso, which means lazy. Well, that's the sloth. El pingüino, penguin, la tortuga. Tortoise or turtle. Ballena is your whale. Okay, so make sure you look through, and you're aware also of these animals and some of the threats facing them, because you're going to have a lot of reading on your chapter 13, or listening, some degree of listening, and they're going to ask you about what you've read, and it helps if you're pre-prepared, knowing the vocabulary. All right. Again, again, we talk more about the environment, and you may have similar passages on your exam, or descriptions, and they'll ask you questions. Here they say, huracanes amenazan la costa. Menace is in there. Menace, that means to threaten. Hurricanes threaten the coast. La tala masiva de árboles. Remember, tala, that's cutting, the massive cutting of trees. Okay. All right, let us move on here. So look through that vocabulary, make sure you're familiar with it. Now we go to estructura, to the grammar section. Okay, so there's 3 areas of grammar here. Let's go to 13.1. And this is the subjunctive of irregular verbs. Okay, and I kind of alluded to this in my last Zoom presentation, because I told you the way I form the subjunctive tense, generally speaking, is I get the yo form of the present tense and I drop the o from it. Okay, so yo veo, I drop the o, and then I add my subjunctive endings, which you should know by now. So if the verb is an AR verb, it will have E endings. If the verb is an ER or IR verb, it'll have A endings. I hope you've all committed this to memory. It's second nature to you by now. It should be. So if you form your subjunctive tense then from the yo form of the verb, it, for me, just makes it easier. Okay, so for AR verbs, what are the endings? Well, for yo, the ending for yo would be an E. For tu, it would be an ES. For ella, usted, it would just be an E. Okay, for nosotros, it would be EMOS, and for ellos, ustedes, it would be EN. Please just go through and make sure that you know those universal endings. AR verbs will have E endings in the subjunctive, and ER and IR verbs will have A endings. All right, so what do they want us to know here? So they want us to learn these irregular verbs. They're irregular in the subjunctive. And what are these verbs? Well, let's look at them. There are irregular yo verbs. And that's why I say if you just go immediately to the yo form of the verb and drop the o, it makes this a whole lot easier. So if you recall, the irregular yo verbs, hacer, poner, salir, tener, traer, are completely regular in all forms except for the yo form. They often have a G in them, okay? So there's an irregularity, and you need to maintain that G when you form the subjunctive of these verbs. And these are the only ones that they're going to really hold you accountable to. So let's take a look at them. So for hacer, the verb to do or make, it's yo hago. So we know immediately that the subjunctive is going to have a G in it. It's an ER verb, so it's going to have an A ending, que yo haga, que tú hagas, que él haga, que nosotros hagamos, or hagamos, sorry, and que ellos hagan. That's how they form. Look at poner. It's yo pongo. There's your G. Drop the O. Que, it's an ER verb, so it's going to have A endings. Que yo ponga, que tú pongas, que él ponga, que ellos pongan. Salir. Remember this verb? It's yo salgo. Again, another, it's got a G in it, so it's que yo salga. It's going to have A endings. It's an verb. Que tú salgas, que él salga. Tener. Tengo. Again, you're going to have the G in the subjunctive form. It's an ER verb, so it'll have endings, que yo tenga, que tú tengas, etc. And finally, traer. Traigo. It's a very irregular verb. Drop that O, que yo traiga, and it'll have A endings, que tú traigas, que él traiga. That's it. Basically, in a nutshell, those are your irregular verbs. Make sure you're able to form them. And I don't know why. Your book is very interesting. I would have laid them all out in the chart, but there are some more irregular yo verbs that they don't list there, like decir, so that's very important. It's yo digo, drop the O. It's an IR verb, so it'll have endings, que yo diga, que tú digas, etc. All right, finally, there's two major verbs that are just irregular and you have to memorize them. Ir, the verb to go, and ser, the verb to be. And you just have to learn these, okay? Que yo vaya, que tú vayas, que él vaya, que nosotros vayamos, que ellos vayan. Ser, que yo sea, que tú seas, que él sea, que nosotros seamos, que ellos sean. Those you just need to learn. Okay. All right. And here they give you some linguistic information on why Spanish evolved the way that it did, inserting the G in the irregular yo verbs. But that's not, it's interesting fact. It's not necessarily, you don't need to know that. Okay. Let's see. Give me a second. Okay, participants. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, a second. I'm not all right. I am not asked to unmute. I don't know if anybody had any comments there. Okay. I am a little bit, give me 2 seconds here. Okay. I don't know what happened to me there. Sorry, I got a erase there. But let's move on. We're almost done with our presentation, and forgive me for that little mess up there. Okay, so make sure you know how to form those verbs in the subjunctive, and let us move on. Okay. So let's go to the next section. When do we use the subjunctive? Well, we already learned some of the times we use the subjunctive. Whenever we're hoping for something, whenever we desire or want something, yo deseo, yo quiero, yo espero. Then you have a second clause, yo espero que tú vengas. Yo quiero que tú comas más. So whenever we have those verbs where we desire, want, or if we recommend something, yo recomiendo que tú comas más. Okay, yo sugiero, I suggest. I counsel you that, I advise you to do this. Yo te aconsejo que vayas. So whenever you recommend, counsel, advise, and then we have the phrases such as it's important that you, es importante que tú vayas, es importante que tú, es necesario que tú comas más. Those phrases, they're kind of like almost like a command, okay? As necesario, you would use the subjunctive after them. And there's a few more instances, so let's look at 13.2. When are we going to use the subjunctive? Wherever there is disbelief or uncertainty, okay? All right, so let's take a look. On page 395, let's go right to the box there on page 395. And it's right here, actividades analíticas, and it explains to you where you and when you would use expressions that would immediately cause the use of the subjunctive. So as you saw in 12.3, with expressions of volition, certain verbs and expressions require that the verb that follows to be in the subjunctive. Okay, so you're going to state something. Yo creo, yo no creo, es posible, pienso, no, or no pienso. You're going to have a sentence, then a que, and a second clause. In that second clause, you're going to use the subjunctive. Why? Again, you will use subjunctive now if there is disbelief or any uncertainty shown. Okay? Okay. All right. So if I say creo que, I will use just a simple what? Present tense. There's no uncertainty. Yo creo que means I believe that. There's no uncertainty. Yo creo que tú eres mi amigo. I believe you are my friend. That verb that follows is going to be used just in the simple present. But what if there's disbelief? With no creo que tú seas mi amigo. Okay, so with no creo, I am going to use the subjunctive. What about es posible? Well, if I say it's possible that something can happen, I'm showing doubt. So es posible que llueva. It's possible that it will rain. Llueva. I use the subjunctive because es posible shows doubt. Espero, of course, we know we always use, whenever we hope for something, we're going to use the subjunctive. What about I think that? I think you are my friend. Yo pienso que tú eres mi amigo. After pensar, I'm certain, I believe that, I think that, I use the present tense. What if I don't think you're my friend? Yo no pienso que tú seas. I'm going to use the subjunctive. Now I'm showing uncertainty. What if I know something? I know you're my friend. Yo sé que tú eres mi amigo. I'm certain. So take a look at this. And there's more expressions. Go through these and look at them that will require the use of the subjunctive. But make sure you know when if there's uncertainty being expressed, use the subjunctive. If there's certainty being expressed, for example, I think, yo pienso, that's certain, use the present tense. Okay. Yo creo, it's certainty, I believe, use the present tense. Okay. Let's take a look. There are many more expressions that indicate uncertainty in Spanish, including no es obvio. If I say it's not obvious that there's uncertainty there, it's going to be using the subjunctive. No es obvio que tú seas mi amigo. What about this? It's improbable that. Es improbable que tú seas. Again, I'm showing uncertainty. And similar expressions such as es imposible que, no es cierto que, no es verdad que, it's not certain that, it's not true that. Again, there's doubt. You've got to use the subjunctive. No es cierto que puedas. It's not certain that you can. All right. Let's see. Now let's look at this one though. Es cierto que. It is certain. Well, if it is certain, there's no uncertainty, so you got to use the present tense. So just look through these. There'll be a few of these on your exam. They're not that difficult. Okay. Let's move on. Give me a second. Okay, let me see if there's any other points to cover here. By the way, here is a penguin rookery. I visited one in Argentina, in the south of Argentina. The penguins burrow, and this is in Patagonia, near the coast. They burrow into the soil and they deposit their eggs there. And a penguin rookery from pinguino is called a pinguinera. Just some extra knowledge for you. But let's move on. Here's a section on further sections on the environment. Again, I would read through these just to familiarize yourselves with the vocabulary. Okay, let's go on to the last area of grammar, 13.3. Para que las tortugas puedan sobrevivir. When else do we use the subjunctive? We use the subjunctive with these phrases that show purpose and contingency. Let's see a little bit more what they're talking about. They give you some examples before they explain, and let's get into the nitty-gritty here and look at this. This is 13.3 on page 399. Let's go through this box. So based on what you saw in para empezar, which verbs what do you use after the phrase para qué? And para qué, for our purposes, always triggers the subjunctive in order that. It's almost making a request, okay? It's almost saying it's a desire, a request. So para qué will trigger the use of the subjunctive always. So let's take a look. Voy a hablar muy despacio. I'm going to speak very slowly. ¿Para qué? ¿Para qué means in order that. It has nothing to do with por qué. Por qué is because. This means in order that. In order that tú me entiendas. And notice entender is an ER verb, but it is an A ending here. I've used it in the subjunctive. So in order that you understand me, and that's the to form, okay? ¿Para qué? All right. So again, they're saying that, again, there's this idea of wanting, of desiring. And so you've got para qué behaves like querer que. All right. Let's move on. So another common expression that is followed by the subjunctive is en caso de que. En caso de que. So again, this is showing what? Uncertainty. And as we saw earlier, uncertainty can trigger the use of the subjunctive, right? And so let's take a look at this. En caso de que, in case that, llueva, okay, mañana, call me. So in case it rains tomorrow, call me. You're uncertain whether it is, but in case it does, we're going to use the subjunctive. It's an ER verb. I have an A ending. It's subjunctive. En caso de que tú no encuentres. Again, I use the subjunctive. In case you don't find me. Again, it's showing the that the event is problematic. It's uncertain, but it could happen. You use what? The subjunctive. That's all. So that's pretty easy. You see, en caso de que. Okay. And they say you could es posible que. That would also use a subjunctive. Es posible que llueva mañana. Again, it's possible that it's showing uncertainty. Remember, from above, the area of estructura we just went through, uncertainty triggers the subjunctive. Okay. And then there's expressions that have nothing to do with subjunctive. Don't be confused with porque. That just means because. So let's take, and you will on your exam, you're going to have some questions where they will put you in a situation using para que and porque. If they give you a question with para que and a verb, you will conjugate that verb in the subjunctive. If they give you a question and a blank next after porque, you would use the present tense. Let's take a look. Voy a hablar muy despacio. I'm going to speak slowly. ¿Por qué? Because a veces no me entiendes. Because sometimes you don't understand me. So I just put it in the simple present tense. Just because sometimes you don't understand me. It has nothing to do with uncertainty. Okay? All right. All right. It is, and so porque is followed by the simple present tense, but it's that para que that triggers. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Llámame, call me, porque va a llover mañana, because it's going to rain tomorrow. Here we definitely know it's certain, totally certain. So we will use the present tense. Okay. What else they have? The indicative or present tense and the subjunctive moods each have their own core meaning. The indicative present tense, I call it the present tense, expresses what is thought to be true. Ellos saben que estudiamos todas las noches. They know that, well, they know that we study every night. They know it. So we're going to just use the simple present tense. We know it's, we don't use the subjunctive. The subjunctive, on the other hand, expresses what someone wants to be true, but isn't yet. Quiero que estudiemos esta noche. Again, this is just rehashing what we went over in our prior unit on using querer and querer triggering the subjunctive. All right. Or what is false or possibly not true. No es cierto que estudiemos todas las noches. Okay. So, all right. And es posible que estudiemos esta noche. Again, there is some uncertainty in each of these. So we're going to trigger the use of the subjunctive. All right. Again, here are these two concepts. Here we're in the first one we use the indicativo or the present tense, and here next to it we use the subjunctive. So go through these and make sure you understand why. Look at this. Sé que las tortugas están bien. I know that the turtles are fine. I use the simple present tense. I don't use the subjunctive. I know it. I'm certain. But here, quiero que las tortugas estén bien. Now here I want something. After querer, we always use a subjunctive. Quiero que las tortugas estén bien. Pienso que ahorras agua. Pienso que means I believe that. I'm certain. I'm going to use what? The present tense or the indicative. Pienso que ahorras agua. I think that you are saving water. Now, here's the verb recomendar. What does recomendar do? Whenever we recommend something, right? We or request something to of somebody, pedir, we use the subjunctive. So here, te recomiendo, it's almost like saying I want that. So te recomiendo que ahorres. I use the subjunctive after recomendar. Okay. And pedir as well. I request that. Te pido que ahorres. I request that you save water. All right. Te voy a invitar a la playa. I'm going to invite you to the beach. Now, ¿por qué eres mi amigo? Because you are my friend. ¿Por qué does not trigger the subjunctive ever. But para qué does. So let's look. Te voy a invitar a la playa para que seas mi amigo. I'm inviting you to the beach in order that you be my friend. And in English, we could use, right, the subjunctive in order that you be my friend or in order that you are my friend. You use the subjunctive after para qué, right? And then when there's uncertainty, something may or may not be true. Now this is going to trigger the subjunctive. No creo means I don't believe. If you don't believe it, you're showing doubt. Use the subjunctive. No creo que los bosques estén. I don't believe that the forests are. Es posible shows doubt. So I have to use the subjunctive. Es posible que ese pájaro sea. It's possible that that bird is a condor. And then here's the famous one we just learned, en caso de que, in case that. In case that shows uncertainty, it'll automatically trigger the subjunctive. En caso de que veas, in case you see, en caso de que. The second clause will be with the subjunctive. All right. So I think that's a good summary of the grammar and the use of the subjunctive. Again, your exam, your chapter 13 exam, I think is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of grammar on it. A lot of it is just reading and listening to various passages on the environment, and make sure you feel comfortable with the vocabulary, and you'll be able, a lot of it are just short answers, and you should do fine on the exam. And I think that does it for this evening.